Yeah.
Good evening, Lori. Haven't seen you for 2 days. 2 whole nights.
Hi, Millie.
Hi.
Okay, you're all set, John.
Good evening. This is the October 3rd meeting of the Northborough Community Preservation Committee. This open meeting of the Community Preservation Committee, which I'll abbreviate as CPC, is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, signed into law March 29, 2023. All members of the CPC are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The act allows the CPC to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Members of the public who wish to view the live stream may do so by going to Northborough Remote Meetings on YouTube. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will not feature public comment. So I'm going to start with a roll call of those that I see are here. And Todd Helwig.
Here.
Leslie Harrison.
Here.
Andy Clark.
Here.
Andy Dowd.
Here.
Sean Durkin.
Here.
Millie Milton.
Here.
Peter Martin.
I am here.
Wonderful. We have, and myself, John Campbell, we have 8 of 9 members. We have a quorum. So first thing I'd like to do is congratulate the town of Northborough and all of you, as this is the 20th meeting of the Community Preservation Committee, the 20th season of meetings, I should say. And it has been a great run, a terrific success for the town. And I appreciate all that you guys have done. And for everyone's on the committee, many of you have been on it the whole time. So thank you for your service and your continued service. Having said all that and patting myself on the back, we're going to start off with a presentation by our town accountant, Jason Little, which we appreciate every year. And Jason has a summary of the CPA accounts and some directives on what we need to do this year. So without further ado, Jason, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, John. I'll just clarify for the record that I'm now the finance director solely and no longer the town accountant, effective September 16th. My former assistant, Katie Holt, has become the town accountant. But
forgive me for underappreciating your title. Jason, finance director, please proceed.
But that's fine. No hard feelings. But I'll still come and do these presentations annually, and I hope to, because I do enjoy coming and speaking to this group.
Thank you.
All right. So my screen should be shared. I believe everybody can see the first PowerPoint slide here.
Nope.
Not shared yet.
Oh no, not yet. All right. Let me do that. Let's see. Here we go.
There you go.
All right, now everybody can see that, correct?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so this is what I intend to go over tonight. We'll talk about the revenue budget for FY 26. One thing I do want to update everybody with is we received the 21.08% FY 23 reimbursement. And we didn't get any supplemental payments in FY 24. We're anticipating a 21% match for 24 in November this year, part of our FY 25 revenues. And we'll talk about the revenue budget for FY 26. So after that, we'll talk about the status of the reserves and what funds are available. And then we'll talk about the annual obligations and the spending reservation requirements, which are based on the revenue budget, and then what's needed for debt service for the White Cliffs. So again, this is coming on to 21 years into FY 26. We're have levied about $10.4 million through FY 25 for the CPA surcharge, and the town's received over $3.4 million in state matching funds, including, $160,000 is what's budgeted for 25, but we'll see what that is in 24. To date, I haven't seen any actual numbers about what it's going to be, but we anticipate it's going to be around 20%. If anybody else has heard anything different, let me know. But as far as I can tell, the DOR is being a little bit tight-lipped about the balance in the trust fund. And just not to go too far afield, but if everybody's aware, the state matching funds, they come from a trust fund for the CPA, and it's a reimbursement of what was levied in the prior year. So we file a report at the end of 24 that explains to the state what our net levy was for the year. And then it goes into a pool and it gets distributed out to everybody based on like all of those filings on this form called the CP1. Now that some pretty large entities have adopted the CPA, like Boston and Worcester, the pool is getting more diluted with reimbursements coming out of the trust fund. And in some prior years, there have been budget surpluses that have been appropriated from the state that have been appropriated into the trust fund. And I'm not aware of any happening in this past year. So as you can see, 3.4 million has been coming through state matches. So that's money that the town would not have had access to had it not been for adopting the CPA. And lastly, what I would talk about is adopting a revenue budget for FY 26. We've had good luck at being conservative with these numbers and being able to meet the budget. The challenging thing about setting a revenue budget so early in the year is that we don't know now what the DOR is going to tell us for the trust fund. So estimating conservative gives us enough room to move these numbers around in case they come out with a directive that says we won't set your tax rate next year if you've estimated more than 10% per se. And I say that just as an example. They haven't said that, but in the past we've budgeted more and needed that flexibility to be able to adjust the budget numbers, to potentially adjust the budget numbers. We've never had to, but it is a risk if we try to budget too aggressively with the revenues from the state match. So for next year, I'm suggesting we adopt a budget of $840,000 rather than $820,000. So it's a small 2.4% increase over the prior year. And that should be attainable.
Jason,
Yes. Feel free to jump in with any questions if anybody has any.
just before you leave that slide, for anyone that might be watching our presentation that's not intimate with CPA as we are, our net levy, the tax revenue that you show in the first column, that comes from a surcharge on property tax, 1.5%. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
So, it's just great to emphasize how good the return on investment is for that relatively small surcharge, raising $10 million over the 20 years essentially, and getting more than 30% return on average year over year, and applying that to so many great assets that we've added in town common, open space, Green Street land, trails, historical restorations, and affordable housing. So I'm proud of the town for adopting it. I'm proud of the town for continuing to support it, and I hope they will continue to do so. Thank you.
Thanks, John. All right, I'm going to move on to the available funds. So basically, this is just a summary of the fund balances that we've seen the past few years, and the mechanics of how the fund balance gets calculated. Since we've closed FY24 and the balance, our free cash has been certified, these are all available balances that can be appropriated at town meeting coming in the spring. So again, the available balances are that you'll have to make spending decisions with this year are the $840,000 in revenues, plus there's $280,000 in the affordable housing reserve, and then $591,000 in the CPA's unreserved, which could be used for any eligible CPA purpose. So again, one thing I wanted to highlight, this is one of the unique features of FY24 was investment income, and we saw some pretty large investment income returns on our balances this year. So I just wanted to call out this feature here where we had budgeted $770,000 and we closed the year with actually $1.1 million in revenues. So that was $342,000 above budget, and we typically budget conservatively to begin with, but of that $342,000, $192,000 of that was investment income. And I just wanted to call that out because that likely things will probably change, and that probably won't continue on forever. And again, I wanted to call out what our available fund balances are. So these two added together, $870,000 plus the estimated revenue, means that you have $1.7 million of available revenue and fund balances available to make allocations from. And again, spending reservation requirements, at least 10% required for open space, historic resources, and affordable housing. I think they've changed the title of affordable housing to community housing. So, but anyway, the three core purposes, at least 10% needs to be spent or reserved for each one of these purposes. And with an $840,000 revenue budget, that would equate to $84,000 for each one of those purposes. And then we're limited to not more than 5% for administration. And we typically budget the 5% for administration. So that would be $42,000. And the other obligation that we have is debt service for the White Cliffs. And again, the number that we would need to appropriate here, I'm anticipating every year we say this is debt service for a bond, but we've been paying down a note every year. We've issued short-term debt because we haven't gone out to the market with any large debt issues. That's probably going to change, and we'll probably issue an actual bond for the White Cliffs this time around. And the interest rate we're expecting is 4.25%. And we got an extra percent built into this number here for issuance costs. So again, the number that we would need to appropriate for White Cliffs that in the article for debt service for FY26 is $166,575. And that actually concludes my presentation. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jason. Very good. Members, open it up to you. Anybody want to know more about the numbers?
Yeah, John, Sean here.
Hi.
Right?
Yep.
How you doing? I just didn't understand the difference. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we can
go
hear
ahead.
you.
Sorry.
I didn't understand the difference on the bond for the White Cliffs. Maybe I was mistaken. I thought it was a bond. Is it a renewable bond, and that's why it changes?
No, a band. I'll just step back and explain this. But
Okay, thank you.
the article has been for debt service to service debt out for the White Cliffs. We have not issued a long-term debt for the White Cliffs yet. We've been issued what's called a note. It's a bond anticipation note. It's basically a bond with a 1-year maturity, and we go out and reissue one. Because of the coming fire station project, we're planning to bond this year. So the interest rate would be locked in the future, basically. We'll know in the future what the interest rate's going to be. And that's basically the only difference between the distinction between a ban and a bond.
Okay, thank you.
Interesting.
Pardon me. Jason, following on to that, it would still essentially be 3 more payments. And then the CPA portion of the obligation would be satisfied?
Correct.
Great, thank you. Would you mind going back to I guess it's your second slide, where it talks about the unreserved account. So I just want to get that straight. It's a bigger number than I expected because we had allocated a large portion toward the Whitney Street land purchase in last year's town meeting.
Right.
But a large amount of extra revenue beyond what was expected and investment income on the unreserved fund balance. Is that how that works?
Yeah, correct. Yeah. So some of the revenues come in higher typically than what's budgeted in the fund. I mean, we're conservative with the budget, but there are things that come into the CPA, like if there's if people pay their tax bill late, there's an interest that's assessed on somebody's tax bill. The CPA portion of that goes into the CPA fund. The investment income, we typically don't budget anything for that, and that came in rather large amount, and so that's some of the differences between budget and actual for the revenues. So that investment income returns is part of that $1.1 million.
So the town keeps the unreserved balance invested really year over year, right?
Correct. Yes.
That's, I don't know why I thought otherwise, but it just increases the return on the CPA money even further, which is great.
Correct. Yeah. So the CPA, it's its own unique fund, and we segregate the accounts so that we can it earns income for the cash balance that's in the CPA fund.
Thank you for clarifying. Any other questions on Jason's data?
Yeah, I got another quick one, John.
Yes, sir.
Maybe Lori would know the answer to this. Part of our Whitney Street appropriation, we were hoping for, I think it was DCR or one of the state entities that wanted to help out with green space, giving us $200,000 more or less towards that project. Does that come in early? And when it does that go into unreserved?
So right now, the DCR is still working on their due diligence. I have been informed that they suspect that their research will be completed by the end of this month. And then at that time, they would be prepared to execute the transfer. So they have provided us with the form of a conservation restriction that they would like us to apply. So we are waiting for them to put in our specific information for Whitney Street. And then once that's complete, then we should be getting that check for $200,000. There was a request from the Conservation Commission. I believe it was part of their motion when they agreed to set aside some money as part of their conservation fund. They would like that $200,000 to go back into their conservation fund.
Well, it sounds like good news, and they seem to be positive towards the grant.
Yes, yep. And actually, they wanted to be clear that this is not a grant. They are paying the town $200,000 for the conservation restriction.
All right. Call it what you will. We'll take it.
Mm,
That's what I figured.
Yep.
Excellent. Excellent.
Good news on that. Yeah, I think the Open Space Committee and Conservation Commission were in agreement that when both signed off on using that large portion of the conservation fund toward Whitney Street, that this bonus reimbursement, we'll call it, would go back into the conservation fund. All right, any other questions for Jason? Hearing none, Jason, I offer our thanks. You're welcome to stick around and hear the wonderful rest of the meeting. Otherwise, thanks again for being with us.
All right,
Thanks,
all
Jason.
right. Thanks. I'll do so offline. And thanks
Okay.
for the invitation. I
You're
appreciate it.
welcome. We really appreciate it.
If anybody thinks that my contact information is obviously here, if anybody has any questions and they want to ask them offline, feel free to contact me. And thanks for having me here.
thank you.
Appreciate your help. Okay, next on our agenda was a discussion of applications we've received to date. Not all are in, it's my understanding, and I think we'll have a more thorough review at the November meeting, where we can kind of add up what we have. However, we do have Rick Leaf, who is sitting in the wings tonight. Rick represents the Northborough Affordable Housing, and he has a brief review for us of the application that is forthcoming that both covers an NAHC project as well as Housing Authority project. That sounds very exciting and doable. So Rick, open it up to you for a few minutes.
Okay, thanks, John, and thank you for letting me talk to you for a few minutes tonight. There is a formal application being developed right now. I'm going to try and get to Lori for mid-October so she can get that to you in advance of your November 7th meeting. And John has asked if the Housing Corporation and our partners that we're working with on affordable housing for this application, it's two separate projects, one with the Northborough Housing Authority and one with Habitat for Humanity. The application will talk about those two projects in total. Those two projects propose to add 14 units of affordable housing to our inventory, 8 by the Housing Authority and 6 by Habitat for Humanity. And I can just briefly describe that to you in a couple of minutes. The application will go into a lot greater detail summarizing all of that. And I can tell you that at this point, we're going to submit one application that combines these two projects. They'll be split out in a way that'll be easy to understand what they are and how the money is being requested. But we're proposing one application because the Housing Corporation feels that creating 14 more units of affordable housing over the next couple of years is critically important, and we want to propose it as one effort as opposed to two separate applications. Our percentage of affordable housing in town right now is 10.28%. That number has been falling from something over 11% over the past few years as more market rate housing is being created in town and no new affordable housing is being added. And you're probably all aware that if we fall to below 10% affordable housing, we're subject to unfriendly and unwanted 40B proposals from developers that could create large amounts of housing in areas of town we particularly wouldn't want it. So we feel it's important to stay above 10%. And these two projects proposed in this application give us the opportunity to do that in the fairly short term. One thing I just want to talk about for a second is how much affordable housing money currently exists in the CPA reserve. The $279,863 that Jason referred to in his summary is basically those years where there was 10% set aside and there was no particular project specified to use that money. So that's basically the years 2020, 21, 22, and 23. In those 4 years, the 10% were set aside. The Housing Corporation presented no projects to use any of that money. You're probably aware from 2015 to 2019, the Housing Corporation asked for another reserve to be set up. And over time, $500,000 additional dollars were set aside. Some of that money has been spent. And then last year, the CPC generously agreed to put $128,000 back into that NHC reserve, which created a $500,000 balance again. That $500,000 for NHC use for future projects is above and beyond the $279,863 that Jason represents here. In addition to that, way back in the day when the Housing Corporation did its project to put 4 units of senior rental housing down on Center Drive on Housing Authority property, there was a balance left over of $569.43 from that project, which had been sitting around ever since 2014. And as part of that project, the Housing Authority demolished the existing senior center to make room for our new building down there. They got CPA money to do that. They came in under budget. And there's $24,745.85. It's been sitting around since 2013 for that. So when you add the $279,863 from the 10% and the $500,000 in the NHC reserve and the $24,745.85 from the demolition of the senior center and the $569.43 left over from the creation of the 4 units, there's about $805,000 of affordable housing money held in reserve right now that hasn't been spent out of CPA money. And if you say that the revenue for next year is going to be $840,000, 10% of that has to go to affordable housing. That's another $84,000. If you add that to the 805, that means that as of town meeting next year, there'll be $889,000 of affordable housing CPA money. And that's the number you're going to see in our application that we're going to talk about using. And our application is also going to talk about needing money beyond that to do the projects we want to do, about $311,000 more. So basically, the application we're going to submit to you to do both the Housing Authority project and the Habitat for Humanity project is going to ask for $1.2 million of CPA money. We're going to say that $889,000 of that exists in reserves. And that, in fact, there'll be a need for another, whatever the difference between 1.2 million and 889 is, about $311,000 to come out of other just general CPA money. So financially, that's what the application is going to say. Right now, the Housing Authority and Habitat are reviewing the application. That $1.2 million number might change a little bit. I don't think it will, but I reserve the right between now and the middle of October to submit an application that asks for a number slightly more or less than that. But I think for planning purposes, you should anticipate we're going to ask for $1.2 million of CPA money. And once again, we're going to say $889,000 of that already exists within CPA reserves. The 2 projects that we're going to talk about are creating a building at the Village Drive Housing Authority complex where they have open space to put in 8 units of veteran rental housing, 1-bedroom units over there for income eligible veterans, with local preference being available for Northborough veterans who income qualify. You probably remember a couple of years ago, We tried to put a building over there, working with the state. And just before town meeting, the state informed us they weren't going to support the project, and we had to pass over that article.
Mhm.
We have a new housing authority director who works much more closely with the state. You're probably aware from things you've read in the paper, the state is dedicating a lot of money towards affordable housing development under Governor Healy's regime. And our new housing authority director has been working for the last 6 months very closely with the state. And the state is very much in favor of this project he'd like to do over on Village Drive. The state indicated to him that they want the town of Northrow to make a significant financial investment in this project. Basically, he's proposing it's going to cost $2 million to do this 2-story building with 8 one-bedroom units. The Housing Authority has $300,000 of funds to put towards the project. He's requesting $800,000 of CPA money, which would mean that between the Housing Authority and CPA, the town would put $1.1 million towards the $2 million project. And the Department of Housing and Livable Communities, EOHLC, would contribute the other $900,000. And our Housing Authority director is telling us he thinks that that $1.1 million contribution would satisfy the state's requirement that the town of Northrow make a significant financial investment in the project, and he feels comfortable the state would provide the other $900,000. So that's one project. And that's 800,000 of the 1.2 million that we'll be asking for. The other project, we've talked about this before, is working with Habitat for Humanity to put some family home ownership affordable units on town-owned land on Boundary Street. You're probably aware that the town dog park is going in on some town-owned land on Boundary Street. There is some existing affordable housing a little bit east of that on Boundary Street, a couple of units that Habitat for Humanity put up in the 1990s. And the Housing Authority also has a duplex down there. And then in the most easterly part of this Boundary Street property, there's still town-owned land that we've been talking to the town administrator and the select board chair about having the town donate a portion of that remaining land to Habitat for Humanity. And they propose to put in 6 units of affordable housing on that property, 3 duplexes with 2 units in each duplex. 2 of the duplexes would have, each one would have 2 4-bedroom units in it, and 1 duplex would have a 2-bedroom unit in it. The city of Marlborough has agreed to let Habitat connect to their water and sewer that go by that property, so there'd be no need for any private wells or septic on the property, which allows them to put in 3 duplexes on that property. What they're proposing is a 2-phase project. In phase 1, which would cost about 1.4 million, they would do all the site work to prepare the property. They would do all the water and sewer connections, and they would put in 1 of the duplexes. One of the duplexes that would have 2 of the 4-bedroom units. And for that, they're looking for $1.4 million. They've asked for $425,000 of a town commitment. Our housing corporation has some money in reserve, and we would put $25,000 towards that project. And we'd ask for $400,000 of CPA money, and that would get phase 1 complete. That would get all the site work done and 1 duplex created. The application is going to say that we'll come back and ask you guys for town meeting 2026 for another $425,000 to complete the project for 2 more duplexes. The second phase of the project will be a $1.3 million project, and Habitat would ask for another $425,000. So basically, although we wouldn't be asking for approval of the money, when we submit the application and we talk about this with you in November, we'd be talking about at least a general commitment that you feel it's appropriate that there would be $425,000 available for town meeting 2026 to complete the project. So basically, $800,000 for the Housing Authority this year, $400,000 for Habitat, $1.2 million in total asked for. And as I said, 889,000 of that would already exist in CPA money if you assume $84,000 more going in as this year's 10%. So that's basically what we're talking about. And like I said, in total, we end up with 14 more affordable units, 8 units that the Housing Authority will create in their building, and eventually 6 more units that Habitat will create. And our feeling is that gets 14 more units on the book. Probably it'll take, 2 to 3 years to get them all built out. But in that time, we probably won't fall below the 10%. In the meantime, if we could put 14 more units in the subsidized housing inventory, that sets us up in pretty good shape, going forward for the future. So we think there's a lot of benefit for doing this. And we'll pretty much be summarizing all of this for you again in November, but that's kind of a heads up of what's coming. And we think with all of this affordable housing money that we've been saving up year after year after year after year after year, this is a very good use for it. And it's a limited ask of new money in 25, and again, a fairly limited ask for new money in 26. So that's what we're doing.
Rick, thank you. That was, I think, about as succinct as you could have done it.
Mhm.
And I expect there'll be more detail, but to summarize, the first application, if I can call it, that would achieve a total of 14 units. You reference the 10% minimum for FY26, and that would be 84,000 as per Jason's slide. And then you believe 311 more would be needed. So essentially 395 thereabouts is what the application will call for. That'll be either, obviously, it satisfies the minimum, but it'll be from new revenue or from reserves. And then the second application is a $400,000 request. And who will be the receiver of that application? Is that money to NAHC, or would that be directly toward whomever is managing the project?
Yeah, so basically what we start to do is the money is used to reimburse invoices that have come in, either to Housing Authority or to Habitat. And the procedure is that I get the invoices when we if these projects are approved, we do funding agreements. The funding agreements attach to them budgets that list how and where and with whom the money is going to be spent. Jason gets those budgets, and then as the projects go forward, either the Housing Authority or Habitat will send me invoices. I will validate them and I'll send them to Jason, and Jason checks them off against the budgets that are in the funding agreements until we've exhausted all of the CPA money that was reserved for these projects. So in both cases, in the application we're going to submit to you in November, we're going to disperse $800,000 to the Housing Authority to reimburse invoices that they have to pay to do their project. And the Housing Corporation will be in the middle of that, but the payments will go directly to the Housing Authority. And we will reimburse Habitat for Humanity for $400,000 of invoices they incur for phase 1 of the Boundary Street project. And once again, I'll be in the middle of that. They'll send me the invoices, I'll validate them, I'll send them to Jason. So the Housing Corporation will not receive any of the money directly. The checks will be cut either to Habitat or to the Housing Authority, but it won't happen until I send invoices to Jason and say, it looks to me like they're valid, go ahead and pay them. And then he compares them to the budgets that were in the funding agreements. If he has any questions, then he asks them, and then eventually the reimbursements are made. But none of the money flows directly to the Housing Corporation.
Oh, great. Thank you. I really just wanted to clarify that that second application was not, adding into the NAHC reserve, which in turn you would use. But in fact, it'll be should it go forward, should it get voted, it would be a direct CPA project to be spent, more or less immediately, right?
Right. So in 2026, the second part of the Habitat project, which is going to ask for $425,000, there won't be any reserve money left because we're going to spend it all on the approvals for 2025. All there will be the 10% for affordable housing that have to be granted in the 2026 town meeting, and the rest of it will have to come from reserves and new money in the 2026 town meeting.
Understood. Thank you. Well, we're fortunate from the extra revenue, the investment income, the unreserved balance we had, and what looks like good new revenue that we'll have resources to give these strong consideration. So thanks again for summarizing. And yes, we will formally invite your crew to the November 7th meeting. We'll take it from there. Any questions from anyone in the committee to Rick? Feel free, just chime in, please.
John, I'll just add that the Housing Authority Board met last night, and we're very excited about both of these projects. And as you know, we had the attempt a couple of years back to get a building over on the Village Drive site, and to be able to do that now at actually a more affordable price and with a better model as far as the finances go. And not only does it give us 8 units of specific veteran housing, but also 4 totally accessible handicap units, which are really lacking, and there's a great need for those. So it's a great project, as is the Habitat project. So thanks to Rick and everyone else involved for all their efforts.
Okay, well, thank you for listening. And like I said, my plan is to get feedback this week from the Housing Authority and from Habitat about the application. We'll finalize that, and I'd like to get that to Lori mid-October so he has a chance to go through it and then get it to you guys so you have a chance to review it before November 7th. I will tell you also, which I forgot to mention, one more thing. We're meeting with the Select Board on the 4th of November to present the Habitat project and to ask them for their approval. They can't make the decision to donate the land, but they can make the decision to put a warrant article on town meeting 2025 warrant to ask the town to agree to donate a portion of that Boundary Street land to Habitat. Obviously, that's critical for Habitat's project. If the Select Board on November 4th does not support this project on Boundary Street, then we'll let you know that, and that will not be a viable project, but we're hopeful the Select Board will be in support of the project in general and in support of proposing to the town that a portion of the Boundary Street land is donated to Habitat for Humanity. The $1.2 million cost of the $400,000 cost for Habitat assumes no land acquisition cost. It assumes the town will donate about 90,000 square feet of that Boundary Street property to Habitat for Humanity through a warrant article at 2025 town meeting. Yeah. Okay, I'm done.
November 4th meeting, right?
November 4 with the Select Board, yes.
Thanks. I threw up a slide and shared my screen. This was part of the presentation at town meeting. So this chart doesn't include what we did approve at town meeting, but a large portion went toward open space recreation on the Whitney Street land. So really, the green section approaches 50% of what we have historically used CPA money for. And affordable housing in the dark blue has been underserved, and we've made that case year over year to the town. So this will be an excellent opportunity to get back toward more equal treatment of affordable housing among our 3 core areas. Thanks again, Rick.
Okay.
Anything else from anyone on the board about affordable housing questions? Lori, is there any other applications of note to bring up?
Well, of course, I did receive one application from the Open Space Committee. We received an application for $200,000 to go into the Conservation Fund. So that will be uploaded soon, so you folks can review that application. I will be submitting an application for White Cliffs. I am unclear at this point what exactly I will be asking for. It's one of two things. So I am awaiting the response on my underutilized properties grant application that I filed last June. I understand from the last 2 years that the response is expected the last week of October. So it doesn't give me a lot of time. So I'm going to have to prepare the application most likely in advance and submit it kind of last minute before the November 1st deadline. So if I'm able to get that grant, that would pay for architectural services to figure out how we can demolish those 1960s and 70s additions and then button up the building in a temporary way while the town figures out what to do with the building. So if I'm able to secure that money, then instead of asking for that amount of money, my grant application will ask for match money for a second underutilized properties grant application that I will file in June of 25. So that would be for the actual demolition work. So I am anticipating requesting $250,000 should that grant application be successful. If it's not successful, then I'll be asking for a lot less, more in the realm of 80 to 85,000. The chances are there's some inflation in the design costs, so I will plan for that accordingly. I do also expect an application from Trinity Church. Unclear at this point what they will be asking for. I did sit down with them a while ago to go over a variety of options. So apparently they're still contemplating what they want to apply for, but I do expect them to submit something. And that's pretty much it that I know of for sure at this point. Nobody else has reached out to me.
On the Trinity Church, I think you'd mentioned to me that they had been in touch with the Historic District Commission as well, just to get guidance on what is applicable. Or they're speaking to you about that. So are they understanding of where they need to qualify on what they're asking
Yeah,
for?
I did speak with them about pretty much exterior improvements is likely a more fundable project. So of course, nothing that is religious in nature, like for example, stained glass windows, but from what I know, they don't have stained glass windows, so but windows is a possible funding request. They may also ask for some replacement doors. We also spoke about potentially steeple repairs, so I'm not sure what they'll actually submit.
If you haven't already, one of us might encourage them to study the communitypreservation.org website, where under their technical assistance tab, they have a neat feature. It says, "Is our project allowable?" And it will walk you through criteria and examples and so on. And so, you know, from the beginning of our committee and developing the application, we have tried to have the applicants, vet their application with the appropriate town committee or otherwise at least research it so that what they bring, will be allowable. And I don't want them to be misled or disappointed in something. So
Sure, I'll send them that link.
perfect. And then with regard to your writing an app for what may come for White Cliffs, obviously submit what you can, at least as a placeholder. And this committee, I'm sure, will be receptive to the revision as you get more information, because we'll have time for the public hearings in December and January.
Yes, I'm hoping that maybe you will be lenient on the support letter from the Historic District Commission, because it's going to be a challenge for me to secure a support letter if I only have like 3 days from when I find out about the grant application and the deadline for the submission.
Absolutely. Thanks for that summary. Any comment from members on these applications coming? Any questions? Chime in, please. You're also cooperative tonight. Oh, very good. Hearing none. Let's move on. We have a couple of items. One is our minutes from our last meeting, March 7, 2024. I'm sure you all remember it. And the minutes were presented from Michelle. Thank you. Does anyone have any edits or otherwise a motion to approve?
I will make that motion.
Second.
That was Peter and Andy Clark. Did I hear?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. We have a motion to approve. Hearing no other comment, I will make a roll call to approve the minutes. And when you hear your name, please say yea or nay. Todd Helwig,
Yes.
Leslie Harrison,
Yes.
Andy Clark,
Yay.
Andy Dowd,
Yes.
John Durkin,
Yes.
Millie Milton,
Yes.
Peter Martin,
Yes.
and John Campbell, me. We are approved. Thank you. Doing good on the agenda, folks. Thank you. So the next item I wanted to review was our next meeting dates and a little discussion. We are planning at least the next 2 months, first Thursday of the month, November 7, December 5. I have always had a preference to have those meetings in person. I think as we get applicants coming in, and particularly for the public hearing portions, that I believe it's most effective in person. So I want us all to agree on that and or hear any objections. The second part of that is I'd like to know if members would accommodate a 6 p.m. start time for those in-person meetings. And I do this for a couple of reasons. One is a courtesy to Lori and how many meetings she has to go through and is at town meeting. And if she's going to go back there, it means, killing 2 hours or so or more. But also just getting started and getting done earlier for everybody's peace of mind at night. But on the other hand, it may be difficult for some to make that earlier time. So I wanted to throw it out and ask opinions. And so we come to a group decision with regard to the time of meeting. So I open the floor.
I'm okay with it.
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine.
Yeah, I think
I'm
it'll be
fine.
okay.
I'm fine with in-person and 6 p.m. start.
Me too.
I believe that was 100% consensus.
Woo!
That's great. Okay. we'll do it. And the first Thursday in January is the 2nd. Is that still a holiday or no? Anyone know?
In college.
I mean,
yeah.
it's
Ah,
definitely a sleepy day, no matter what. But without objection, we'll continue as the first Thursday, so we would do January 2nd as well. And then we've usually kind of taken it from there to see if we need to continue the public hearing. Historically, we go to February for our final decisions, and sometimes into the next month. But if everyone's good, then we'll agree on November 7, December 5, and January 2nd. And at 6 p.m. start time in person. We just don't know where yet. Is conference room B available? I noticed somebody was occupying that, Lori.
I believe it should be available, but we will verify that.
Sorry. Very good.
So John, I just want to confirm so I can communicate to Habitat and Housing Authority. So November 7th, we'll be meeting at 6 o'clock.
Yes, and we can put you early in the agenda, or you let me know if you're going to have trouble getting people there. We can bring it out a little bit. And Rick, if that's too early, you want to come to the December meeting, let me know. Otherwise, we'll assume we'll get into all the housing stuff on November 7, and then determine if you need to return. I guess this brings up a point. Should we declare open public hearings starting on the 7th? And do we have time to do that? We need like 2 or 3 weeks, right?
I do need to advertise. So I can't remember if our public hearing notice specified the applications received. It might have just been a general public hearing notice, in which case we could be ready to go for November 7th. But if you want the application specified, then we wouldn't be able to proceed with the public hearing on that date. We would need to go to December.
What do you mean by when you say application specified?
I couldn't remember if we specified what the projects were.
Oh, in the open
Public
hearing?
hearing
No.
notice.
I
No.
don't believe so. I think it's just a public notice, and frankly, I think the legal obligation is only at least one hearing a year, and traditionally we keep it open for the meetings at which we talk to applicants and make deliberations, right? So
Okay. So you want me to advertise the start of the public hearing on November 7th?
why not? Yes.
Okay.
All right. So again, everybody good with the dates and the times? Thank you again. I think that's a good idea. And we'll always try to keep our meetings under 2 hours. Usually we're successful. Any other new business, new ideas? Anyone want to contribute?
John here. I have another question for Lori.
Sure.
Rick mentioned we were getting dangerously close to the 40B number of 10%.
Correct.
Would the new statute for ADUs, would they be affordable housing units by definition? Or accessory dwelling units, they're calling them, if they're for family members or the like? Does that then, any that come online in Northborough, can they be deemed affordable to counteract 40B?
The only way that could work is if they were deed restricted. So,
I see.
yeah, the people would have to income qualify who occupy those units. And they'd have to be subject to a special marketing practice to make sure that they were affirmatively marketed to minorities. So it is unlikely that those could be included unless we were going to mandate that they're deed restricted. A lot of times they are for an in-law situation.
Yeah, yeah, that's
And
what I was
then-
thinking.
And then, of course, as the in-laws pass away, then they may become rental. But the in-laws may not income qualify. They may, or they may not. So
Yeah, okay.
that might be a challenge.
Yeah, I was just curious
Also-
because kind of,
Also, there has to be a lottery conducted to select the person to go in there. It just can't be, you just can't pick someone to go in there. There has to be a lottery conducted where income qualified people get to put their names in, and then somebody's name is drawn out of a hat to occupy that unit.
I see. Okay.
Can you, does anybody recall what that number is that we're currently at right now?
10.28.
That's pretty low, huh? Pretty close. And is that evaluated one time a year or ongoing throughout the year with different projects?
It's evaluated once a year by the state. So they provide a listing of every community's subsidized housing inventory and qualified units.
And those are just units that are currently occupied rather than units that are in progress of being built.
Correct. So right before they're occupied, so when they're ready for an occupancy permit, that is when the deed restriction is typically put on.
So for example, you guys helped to finance Habitat renovating a unit at 178 Boundary Street to conduct a lottery and put a family in there, and that unit's going to go on the SHI. So right now the work is done, the renovation is complete, and Habitat and the Department of Housing are working together to determine the sale price and the terms of the lottery. So the unit's not on the SHI yet, but hopefully in the next few months, they'll conduct a lottery, put somebody in there, and as soon as they do, that unit will be added to the inventory.
We did include an affordable housing provision within our new MBTA bylaw that was passed last year. So the way that works is the affordability requirement would kick in at 10 units or more. So that's one of the struggles for the town of Northborough, because on average, we are only building maybe 10 to 15 units per year. And most of those units are single-family homes, either on existing roadways or common driveways. So we see very few developments. There hasn't been a significant development in many, many years. So the affordable housing trigger doesn't come into play if you're only building one house over here and one house over there and one house over there. So that's unfortunately the MBTA bylaw affordable housing provision isn't going to help us unless there's a significant development built of more than 10 units.
Thank you, Lori. Any other new business, comments, questions? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Millie, and thank you, Andy. Very good. Roll call to adjourn. Todd,
Yep.
Leslie,
Yes.
Andy Clark,
Yes.
Andy Dowd,
Yes.
Sean,
Yes, sir.
Millie,
Yes.
Peter,
Yes.
and John. I'm in too. Thanks, everybody. Good meeting. See you on the 7th.
Thank you.
Thank you.